You have probably seen the photos. A delivery truck in Tokyo threading through a street so narrow the side mirrors nearly touch the buildings. A K-truck on a Japanese farm, barely bigger than a riding lawnmower, hauling a full load of rice. And then you picture the Ford F-250 your neighbor drives, or the Chevy Silverado parked at the grocery store. And something does not add up. Same planet, same job, same cargo going into the back. But the Japanese truck is 1/3 of the length, less than half the width, and roughly 1/4 of the weight. Why? The easy answer is narrow streets, and that is not wrong, but it is maybe 20% of the real story. The actual reason involves a single law written in 1949, while Japan was still rebuilding from the war, a shaken inspection that can cost the price of a used motorcycle every 2 years, a 25% tariff signed by an American president in retaliation against European chicken imports, and a federal rule from 2012 that quietly rewards automakers for making trucks bigger. By the end of this, you will understand exactly why a Japanese truck is built one way and an American truck is built the exact opposite way, and you will never look at either one the same again. But let us start with what everyone gets wrong. The obvious explanation goes like this. Japan is a crowded country with narrow streets, so the trucks have to be narrow too. And on the surface, that is true. A lot of Japanese residential streets are 4 meters wide or less. Legacy alleys in older neighborhoods, the kind built centuries before anyone imagined a truck, can shrink to 2 or 3 meters across. A Ford F-250 is about 2.04 meters wide with the mirrors folded, and closer to 2.5 meters with them out. Put that vehicle on a classic Japanese residential lane, and you are not driving anymore. You are stuck. You are physically stuck between 2 garden walls with no way to turn around. So yes, geometry matters. But here is what that explanation misses. A wider truck could still use Japan's bigger roads, the arterials, the highways, the commercial districts. Plenty of full-size vehicles exist in Japan. The question is not why small trucks can fit, it's why Japanese trucks are engineered to stay at exactly 3.4 meters long, 1.48 meters wide, and 2.0 meters tall, forever, across every manufacturer, every generation, every decade. Those specific numbers are not suggestions. They are the legal maximums for the K-class, and they have not meaningfully changed in decades. The real infrastructure pressure sits under the roads, not on them. Japan is about 73% mountains. Nearly 3/4 of the country is land you cannot build on, cannot farm on, and cannot drive on in any normal way. Everything, every city, every highway, every rice paddy, every factory is crammed into the leftover flat strips along the coasts. The country's population density is roughly 10 times that of the United States. Every meter of road space is premium, and that is why Japanese trucks do not just fit the roads. They are shaped by them in a specific way almost no American would notice. Look at a Japanese delivery truck. The driver sits directly on top of the front axle. There is no hood, no long engine bay sticking out in front of the windshield. The cab-over design exists because if your legal maximum length is 3.4 meters, you cannot waste 80 centimeters of it on an engine bay. You need every millimeter for cargo. So Japanese engineers took the engine and tucked it under the driver's seat. It is a completely different philosophy of how a truck should be laid out. A full-size American truck is mostly hood. A K-truck is mostly cargo bed. Same vehicle role, opposite engineering priorities. But infrastructure alone does not actually explain why Japanese trucks stay this small, because manufacturers absolutely could build them bigger for export, and in many markets they do. The real reason these vehicles are this tiny, for this long, is not geography. It is money. And the Japanese government has been tightening the screws on large vehicles in a way Americans would find genuinely hard to believe. Here is the part almost nobody outside Japan ever sees. Japan's tax code and vehicle inspection system do not just allow small trucks, they actively punish big ones. The central mechanism is called Shaiken. Shaiken is a mandatory government vehicle inspection, required every 2 years for most cars on Japanese roads, and 3 years for brand new ones. Shaiken is not a quick smog test. It is a full mechanical teardown style check with a price tag to match. For a typical regular class passenger car, Shaiken routinely costs somewhere between 100,000 and 200,000 yen, which at recent exchange rates is about 650 to 1,300 US dollars every 2 years. For the privilege of continuing to drive the car you already own. But here's the catch. Key class vehicles, the tiny ones with the yellow license plates, get a dramatically reduced Shaiken cost. They pay less annual automobile tax, which is scaled to engine displacement, so the 660 cubic centimeter K truck is in the lowest possible bracket. They pay less weight-based tax. In many prefectures, they pay lower mandatory insurance. On certain toll roads, they get cheaper rates. Even the parking infrastructure is partly optimized around them. In Japan, proving you own a parking space is legally required before you can register most vehicles, but key owners in many areas get a pass on that rule entirely. For a rural farmer, a small business owner, a food delivery driver, buying a full-size truck is not just impractical, it is financially absurd. You would be paying the price of a used motorcycle every single year in taxes and inspection fees before you have bought a drop of fuel. And the fuel cost makes it worse. Japanese gasoline typically runs the equivalent of 5 to 6 US dollars per gallon, roughly 1.5 to 2 times American prices. Highway tolls in Japan are among the most expensive in the world, so you are stacking penalty on penalty on penalty. Therefore, the 660 cubic centimeter engine is not a primitive leftover from the 1950s. It is a precisely optimized financial instrument. Every dimension of the K truck, 3.4 meters long, 1.48 meters wide, and the 64 horsepower voluntary industry cap exists to keep the vehicle inside the cheapest tier of every single fee structure the Japanese government operates. The yellow license plate is literally the visual signal of a different economic class of citizen on the road. And this connects to something parked on a golf course or a farm in your own home state right now. Something that almost certainly has no business being there legally. But we will get to that in a minute. But here's the strange part. The 660 cubic centimeter cap, the 3.4 meter length, the 1.48 meter width, none of those numbers are not arbitrary. They were set, in their original form, by a law written when Japan had almost no paved roads to drive on. Rewind to 1949. Japan is 4 years out from the end of the war. Entire cities are still rebuilding. Private car ownership is essentially non-existent. Most Japanese people get around on foot, on bicycles, on trains. There is no domestic mass-market auto industry worth mentioning. Materials are scarce. Foreign exchange to buy American or European cars barely exists. The Japanese government faces a problem. If the country is ever going to motorize, it has to figure out a way to let ordinary citizens own a vehicle without requiring a factory infrastructure that does not exist yet, and imports that nobody can afford. The solution was the KEI Jidusha, which means light motor vehicle. It created a separate legal category with its own dimensions, its own engine displacement cap, its own tax treatment, its own inspection rules. The original displacement limit, written into that 1949 framework, was 150 cubic centimeters. That is smaller than most modern motorcycles. Some of the earliest K vehicles had engines barely more powerful than a lawnmower. But it worked because it gave manufacturers and citizens a legal doorway into vehicle ownership that did not require them to compete with American or European cars at all. The limits were ratcheted up in careful steps. 360 cubic centimeters in 1955, 550 cubic centimeters in 1976, 660 cubic centimeters in 1990. Always moving, always small, never replaced. And the companies that figured out how to build profitable businesses inside this tiny box became household names. Suzuki started as a loom maker, then built its modern empire on key class vehicles. Daihatsu did the same. Subaru's first car, the 360, was a K. Honda, Mitsubishi, all of them spent formative decades building product lines whose survival depended on squeezing every drop of engineering ingenuity into 3.4 meters of length and a displacement limit you could fit in a cereal bowl. The modern Japanese auto industry did not begin with Toyota luxury sedans or Nissan sports cars. It began with a government-mandated ration of engine displacement coded into law by a country that had just lost a war. Meanwhile, 10,000 kilometers across the Pacific, America was running the exact opposite experiment. Eisenhower signed the Federal Aid Highway Act in 1956, setting up the interstate system. Gasoline was cheap, land was cheap. The average American drove further every year, and the vehicles scaled up to match. Two countries, same decades, opposite trajectories. But the moment you line those two timelines by next to each other, something becomes impossible to ignore. Americans did not end up with giant trucks by accident. The size of the trucks in American driveways right now is also the product of a specific law. Two specific laws, actually. And they are still enforced today. The same kind of rule that made Japanese trucks tiny is the reason American trucks grew. And this is the part that nobody talks about. December 1963. President Lyndon Johnson signed Presidential Proclamation 3564. On the surface, it is a trade dispute. Europe had slapped tariffs on imported American chicken, and the U.S. was hitting back. The retaliation package included a specific item, a 25% tariff on imported light trucks. Every news outlet at the time treated it as a minor diplomatic skirmish, but that tariff, known today as the chicken tax, is still in force more than 60 years later. It outlasted the original chicken dispute by decades. It outlasted the presidents who passed it and the presidents who could have repealed it. And it did something nobody fully predicted in 1963. It made the small imported truck segment economically impossible in the United States. Toyota, Nissan, Isuzu, and Mitsubishi, companies that could have flooded America with cheap, efficient, Japanese-style small commercial trucks, were locked out. They either built trucks in North American factories specifically to dodge the tariff, or they stayed out of the segment entirely. That is why you have never walked into an American dealer and bought a brand new K-truck. The law will not let you. Then, in 2011, the EPA and NHTSA restructured the Federal Fuel Economy Rules, the CAFE standards, around a concept called vehicle footprint. The rule, effective with the 2012 model year, grades fuel economy targets based on the rectangle formed by a vehicle's 4 tires. Bigger footprint, looser fuel economy target. University researchers and regulatory economists have been pointing out for over a decade that this structure creates a direct incentive to build trucks bigger. And the data fits. The current Ford F-150 is roughly 7 inches wider than its 1990s equivalent. Crew cabs that used to be specialty orders are now the default. 3-row full-size SUVs keep expanding. Same road, same country, same decade, bigger vehicles every generation, and a regulation that quietly rewards the growth. This is how you end up standing in the checkout line at a rural Tennessee gas station, looking out the window and seeing what you think is a tiny foreign pickup with the steering wheel on the wrong side. It's a Suzuki Carry, or a Daihatsu Hijet, or a Honda Acti. It's in America because it's over 25 years old, which is the threshold where NHTSA lets non-compliant vehicles be imported. It's not in America as a new vehicle because the chicken tax blocks it. The little truck you're looking at is a legal ghost, present in the country, but not allowed to participate in most of it. Every time you've driven past a Japanese mini truck on a farm, a golf course, a hunting lease, a college campus grounds crew vehicle, you were looking at the visible tip of a 60-year-old tariff and a 75-year-old foreign regulation tangling together. The price of your groceries is partly shaped by how U.S. supply chains move last-mile cargo in bigger trucks than Japan does. The The gas you burn getting to work is partly set by the fuel economy target applied to the footprint of the truck you drive. The parking lines painted at your local grocery store are sized for vehicles whose dimensions were nudged upward by a rule most Americans have never heard of. So here's where you actually land. You started this looking at 2 photos and wondering why they did not match. A delivery truck in Tokyo the size of a refrigerator. A pickup truck in a suburban American driveway the size of a small apartment. Same job, same cargo. Completely different machines. But what you were actually looking at was 75 years of industrial policy, a mountain range that covers 3/4 of Japan, a post-war law that rationed engine displacement to 150 cubic centimeters, a vehicle inspection system that charges the price of a used motorcycle every 2 years, a 1964 tariff that was supposed to be about chicken, and a 2012 fuel economy rule that grades pickup trucks on the size of the rectangle their tires form. Japanese trucks are not small because Japan is small. They are small because a recovering country, in 1949, wrote a law defining what ordinary citizens were allowed to own cheaply, and then built an entire tax, insurance, inspection, and toll infrastructure on top of that law. American trucks are not large because Americans love big trucks. They are large because 2 pieces of regulation, one 60 years old and the other barely 10 years old, made large trucks the rational outcome. You are not looking at a cultural preference. You are looking at 75 years of tax policy translated into sheet metal. If you think the Japanese versus American truck gap is strange, wait until we get into why American pickup trucks have been growing every single generation, and how the exact same rule that was supposed to make them cleaner is the reason they keep getting bigger.